Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for the Demystifying Money podcast. I'm your host, Misty Lynch, and today I'm going to talk with my friend Priya Chandaraj. She is the CEO of Finteamone, and we're going to talk about business and finances and things that she feels like people can do to help transform their business finances and make things run a lot smoother, especially for those small and mid-sized business owners. So thank you, Priya, so much for joining me today.
Yeah, thank you, Misty. I really appreciate you having me on the show.
This episode of Demystifying Money with Misty Lynch is proudly sponsored by Soundview Financial Advisors. Visit www.soundviewfinancialadvisors.com to learn more.
I'd love to hear a little bit more about your career path. I know that you probably had some other things that you thought you might do when you first entered the business world, but what types of, roles did you hold that finally got you to the point where you created your business that you built Finteamone?
So funny enough, like if you had asked me about 2.5 years ago, I would have never imagined I worked for large Fortune 500 companies pretty much my entire career. I never really thought that I'd go into being an entrepreneur or solopreneur at the time. And I think, it was really an evolution where I've always been in the finance world. I took a role at a startup for about a year, and in large financial like companies, I did a lot of financial transformation.
Mhm.
And it led me, and it takes a lot toll to organizations as they go into especially the fintech and the digital era right now. Finance has always been something people are a little bit taken back, as you can see. They take a long time to kind of get into the finances, and they've always considered as a cost center. So not people invest a lot in theirs, but now with finance being in the fourth center, especially with the economic outlook and insights we see every day, data and finances is such a key aspect of everything anyone does, whether they're making any type of decision. So people are trying to go into a more modern financial digital era.
Mhm.
So with that is where I got the idea to really create my company. So we are a one-stop shop for small to medium-sized firms.
Mhm.
And our goal is to really help them be on this financial path without really investing a lot of their time and effort, where we do the heavy lifting, manage their finances, but
Mhm.
also provide the right skill set for what they need and not just a bookkeeping service.
Nice. Yeah. So what types of businesses do you typically work with? Is there a certain industry or a certain business, or is it really in general more about the size?
To be honest, it's really depending on. So it is a small to medium-sized business, and if you see different banks, everyone like defines it differently. So I say between 1 to 2 million to 100 million in revenue, or Series A at least,
Hmm.
because I think that's when they have to really understand how their finances have to operate. They need to have some type of control in place. They need to have, they are thinking of scaling, so they need employees. They need to see compliance-wise, what do they do? It's really those that are a good fit for what we do. We are a global company, so we have offices in India and Philippines and UK. So our goal is to really look at global talent in order for us to be able to service our clients.
So when you created your team, what were some of the things that you felt like was a need that you needed to fill out there in the business world that, you were able to take those skills from large corporations and startups, but what were some of the common pitfalls that you were seeing some business owners face that you felt like they really, could do better or maybe, could help more people if they had more support?
So I think like when a lot of CEOs and founders that I speak with and I talk, they are making decisions, especially on the financial side, which is really
Mhm.
post-mortem, because they are not really leveraging the information or having a discipline to looking at it like every month, making sure they're evaluating what their cash burn rate is. It's not a pulse check that they do and make decisions based on that. They're really using gut as a mechanism to
Hmm.
scale and say, oh, we could do this, we could do this. And then they realize that it's not really as they had imagined. So I see that very often, to be honest. And also, I think somehow something about finances, a lot of business owners kind of take a step back. It's not in their forefront. They're like, yeah, okay, we'll deal with it at the year end during taxes. Like that's usually what people think about.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like that's something that they need to, I mean, it's a really simple mindset shift, right? You need to track, you need to review, then you reflect, and then you are ready for the next month in order to, it's just like a strategy. You just need
Mm-hmm.
to approach it in a similar manner.
I think that's interesting that you mentioned the business owners and the CEOs kind of making decisions kind of based on their gut or their intuition. And I think when you first start out, that can help you get pretty far, especially when you have a great idea for a business or you're out there solving a problem. But then when you mentioned getting to that point where you're at that, 2 million beyond revenue, where those skills might not be everything that you need. It might be more important to kind of like look at the data because I think as when you're a CEO, when you're a leader, you might be very used to being the one that makes the decisions and kind of just going with what feels what feels right. But I think looking at that data is so important. And you're right, some people feel like it's going to slow them down or it's not going to look good, or they might not want to do that. And so I think people do kind of put that off. But at a certain point, when it comes to scaling and growing to that, that now 8 figure, but like it's just something that has to get done. So I want to hear your point of view though, for like what do you think as far as, the importance of like cash flow management and bookkeeping when it comes to a business that's looking to really stay in business for a long time or potentially maybe be sold or something like that. How important is that piece of it to the health of a business?
So I think, I mean, to be honest, that's really the fundamental, bloodline of an organization because whether you are even a solopreneur or when you start off, you have to invest in your cash flow,
Mhm.
which means that, whether you're putting in your own equity or not, or you're getting equity from elsewhere, that's really required for you to. So if you think of yourself as, keeping your personal finances and your businesses separately, I think is key because that ensures that you're treating a business as its own entity and then looking at cash flow specific to that. I think that's really a good outlook to ensure that they have a sustainable growth and sustainable operations, I would say, right? And not and a lot of them don't review their financials regularly. Like they say, oh, okay, we'll just send it to our bookkeeper who magically gives us at the end of like, quarter or whatever. That's really blindsiding your business, right? Because you're not really looking at, do I have enough funds? Can I cover it? And a lot of them that I see is they don't pay themselves,
Hmm.
right? Like to
Yeah.
me, that's another aspect that people in smaller businesses, they think, oh, I'm taking care of everything, but they don't realize that they are not valuing their services to an entity. And that's where you see a lot of pitfalls because when they are looking at exiting, that cost aspect hasn't been considered. And so even who's an investor, they're going to have to find, why am I so dependent on this owner? Because and the cost that's associated to it, right? So I think that's a key aspect. And a lot of them are reactive decision making. So they'll wait until the cash is super low in their bank. And
Hmm.
then they're like, oh, what do I do in the middle of this? Let me go and see if I can infuse more funds into this. And I think that's why management is such a key aspect because one, you're proactively forecasting, you are budgeting what you need to do, as well as you're looking at different scenarios based on your plans to grow. And all of these should be aligned with your strategy for the year or for the quarter. And, no matter what scale up method you're using, right? I still feel your strategic vision should be aligned with your cash forecasting as well.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of times where the cash flow, and you mentioned that waiting, reacting, seeing what's in the bank, knowing, okay, I need to either find more, create more, but it's also, like you said, when you're always reacting, it could also cause a lot of unneeded stress and pressure, or maybe it could lead to you saying no to different things that could potentially be an option because you're just kind of reacting to whatever the situation is right now and what's in the accounts. So I think that having that strategy is super important, and especially for, founders to kind of come back to
Mhm.
and always make sure that they're, acknowledging it even as the business starts to evolve and change.
Yeah.
And when what you mentioned about not paying yourselves, I do feel like a lot of times that is something that business owners don't think about, is there any thoughts behind, is it because they feel like they are the business that they don't separate themselves from the entity where they would, expect a salary or expect to get paid? Or is there really something, is there fear there that when it comes to actually pulling, money out of the business to live?
I think both, to be honest. I think it's also, I would say, like that discipline, the financial
Hmm.
discipline to say, okay, what is the value that I'm adding to the business and the financial outcome of that? And I'm taking that out. Like if they didn't do it, somebody
Hmm.
else would have to do it.
Yeah.
And there's a cost associated to it. And
Hmm.
I don't think a lot of people think about it because when they start adding the cost, they may not look as profitable, for
Hmm.
example,
Right.
right? So I think that's one fear. So I would say fear definitely
Hmm.
plays a key role. But also, I think I just feel like regular financial discipline, looking at the data in a manner where they associate the right value and say, okay, what is my gross margin? How much time did I spend there? What was
Hmm.
my EBITDA? Like, if I add my cost, like, what does that look like? I think it's really that discipline for them to think about it. And I always tell people, like, when you think of your business, think that, somebody is always going to come in like 3 months and look at your business and say, I want to do this.
Hmm.
How would you value that? Like, you got to figure out a good way to kind of have an exit plan to your earlier question, because I think that helps you set the right metrics in place and right method. So you're constantly evaluating how well your business does.
I love that idea. And I think that it is something that could be a little bit intimidating for some business owners to be thinking about that and thinking about the value and how much they're putting into it. Also, what other people would potentially think of it, because we do kind of hold our businesses pretty close, but it is important. And you mentioned exit planning, which is something that I've spoken to other professionals about on the podcast before, which is a very important part of the business life cycle. And that I think we should all be kind of thinking about even when we're in the middle or the beginning. But it can be something that's a challenge, but also the more you think about it ahead of time, the easier it can be. And usually the better you can do if you were to sell your business rather than having your records and your books be a mess where somebody could potentially come in and make an offer that might be undervaluing the business, but it's really hard to know when you're not looking at those things. So those are all super important. I'd love to hear a little bit more kind of about the services that you mentioned that you offer, just for people who are thinking about, a lot of times they might start with a bookkeeper or maybe an accountant, maybe and help with finances and investments. But talk a little bit more about the fractional chief financial officer role and what that person does, and then also maybe some of the other pieces of it that people could start to think about. Maybe if there's areas of the business that they don't enjoy spending time in on the financial end, or that they really are struggling to figure out how to succeed in.
Sure. So, I mean, the very simple thing is if you're a solopreneur, typically, or even for companies, I know as much as like 5 million, they will basically just have one bookkeeper.
Hmm.
And to be honest, I always say that's like a wrong marriage. You're expecting your bookkeeper to be helping you scale, to helping you be strategic, to helping you do, your day-to-day operations. And that's not how you scale, right? You have to ensure you have the right infrastructure
Hmm.
in place to be able to drive. So, and I say if you got a Porsche and you didn't know how to drive, it's
Hmm.
pretty much the same thing. So you have a very successful business, but you don't know how the bells and whistles of the tools that you have work. In the same way, it's skill set, I feel. So the CFO role is so crucial because what they do is they are the strategic arm and they help you scale an organization. And being that strategic and execution wing for on the business side, and especially today with modern CFOs, and I call it modern because it's not traditional; they were more a controllership role. But I think today they're more adding value role in terms of every function within the business. So, for example, if with insurance, looking at your your risk, looking at, evaluating your investments, looking at how do we exit, finding that business development opportunity, and having scenario planning with all of these. And I think within the CFO office, so finance and accounting, if you think of it as a broader spectrum, I always say that, the CFO plays that strategic arm. So they are really the brains behind how all of these would function. And they are tied very closely with the CEO. And then comes the actual operations of it. So for example, from a forecasting, understanding your budget, how do we analyze that, looking at your cash projections and doing multiple scenario planning. That's where the, financial planning and analysis role kind of comes into play. And then we have the controllership, where they're looking at internal controls within their organization and saying, okay, what do you need to know? But for smaller companies, they don't need all these full-time roles because it's not required. So that's where the fractional model makes sense. So we go in, evaluate your company and say, okay, what do you really need? Your majority of your load is maybe accounting and bookkeeping services, but you do need these other elements. For example, what your burn rate is, what are the key KPIs you should be looking at? And that's where a fractional FP&A person would make more sense. And then, what is your strategy? How do you want to get there? What do you need to do? And that's where the CFO kind of plays a key role. And maybe some organizations have a very high focus on treasury. If it's a fintech with treasury aspect to it, right? Then we'll find a treasury consultant that, like instead of you finding a treasury consultant, like we provide that as a fractional model, depending on where you are and what you're doing. So really, I feel like it's really looking at a company and what they offer as their company value, and then provide the services associated to them, depending on what should be the functions within the CFO office.
Do you have any success stories or any clients that you could think of that you might have come in with, to be able to help? Because I think that there's probably some times where people maybe they think they're worse off than they are, or maybe they're not sure, and it can all be very intimidating. So I'd love to hear, maybe, any situation where you felt like it's been able to benefit, obviously, your business and then help somebody else who maybe was struggling.
Yeah, so we've had a couple of clients now where some of them we've done basically started off, they were at 2 million plus, just started with like cleaning their one-off like accounting issue. And then it became a normal accounting operations work that we started doing, right? So we started with, system migration to then ultimately managing their finances, because our approach and our methodology was so unique that people really liked, our clients really liked how we've kind of used that. And that really comes from the framework I've been using for larger, Fortune 500 companies, because building centers of excellence is a standard thing. Everyone does it. So it's just that the access to SMB market it's not easy because they don't have the bandwidth to do it. That's where our expertise kind of plays a key role. So I would say that is one. I've also worked with solopreneurs, and they love it. For them to not having to do being a one-stop shop that does all of their services, and provide that financial visibility on a monthly basis, they love. So we have like a monthly call, like as of with every client, no matter what size. And we kind of go over and tell them where they are, based on their budget. If they have something, we share with them what their variance is and kind of, let them know. They may not have any answers, but at least they're aware of where they stand. And all of our clients love that approach.
Yeah.
Because that is something that they have never got from other people.
What would you say the investment would be? Not exact, I'm sure it's different for every business, but what should somebody who's looking to maybe invest in these services and this type of help, what should they be thinking, what should they be planning for as far as what they would budget in for these type of services? I know maybe they don't need 4 full-time positions, but what should they have in their mind as far as, what that investment could look like on maybe a monthly or annual basis if they wanted to get this type of support?
Yeah. So typically on an industry average, it's anywhere between 8 to 10%
Mhm.
for accounting services. Like if you go for, the larger the business, obviously the percentage may change depending on the complexity and what you need. So I would say you should keep that as a ballpark when you're
Mhm.
looking at it. But also if you're a really small business, but you're starting off and you have complex structures you want to build, you have like, legal support, it all varies, but I would say think of it, somewhere between, 8 to 10 is a number, is a percentage number based on your revenue. You want to kind of keep track of it.
Yeah, I
And
think
and
that's
the
good for
reason
people
why
to
I
know.
say that is
Mhm.
also irrespective of whether you outsource it to somebody like us or
Mhm.
you're doing it, it's the time investment and the value that you
Yeah.
need to do in order for you to scale and operate as a business. So it's a very important aspect for people to consider that. And I tell
Yeah.
them it doesn't matter if you want us to do it or somebody else, but you have to realize that this is critical for your
Yeah.
business to scale.
Right. No, it is such an important role. And I think at that point, I think when people are looking at, spending, their time and energy, potentially learning things that they don't understand or doing work that they don't enjoy or don't, feel that comfort level with, that sometimes outsourcing can help them get bigger faster and grow.
Right.
So, very, very important to know. I'm curious your thoughts. There are a lot of changes that are going on as far as, the future of financial management and, you know, AI and all sorts of things that come into play, that business owners are looking at or different technology to bring into their business. How do you feel that technology is changing, financial services from your perspective? Um, and, are there lots of shiny objects with some business owners looking to invest in certain things or tech or tools that they hear about? But how do you see that, everything as far as automation and things like that impacting businesses?
I love this question because I'm an AI enthusiastic
Hmm.
person, and I've been talking about technology and leveraging it in the financial world. And I feel like personally, me, one of the things why I even created the company is because I think like we as financial teams and our profession, really didn't do a great job of like marketing and change management for the next generation, I think. So we don't really get like the buzz of STEM and other things. They really think accounting is a very boring function, like it's very like, back office. Nobody needs to
Yeah.
care. Nobody needs to worry about it. And technology will help us a lot. What it'll do is it'll ensure people when they're looking at their data, they're analyzing the insights of an organization, how they're going to do it and what they're doing. It'll give people visibility on what we do. And I think that I'm excited about because then we're creating value for companies that didn't know what geeky accounting people did in the past. Right. I say accounting because even though it's financial,
Mhm.
everyone thinks accounting is finance. Like I'm sure you've heard that,
Yeah.
multiple times.
Mhm.
So I just put finance and accounting in like one bucket. And I really think that technology is our friend now. We are in I mean, super excited to be in this era of
Mhm.
digital age because I really think modern technology will help us. And everyone's using AI. Like every fintech company, we
Mhm.
use ERPs. They're all trying to figure out how can the AI aspect help us, both generative AI and just, artificial intelligence in general, or even automation.
Mhm.
Talk about RPA and things like that when you talk about technology. So I don't think we need like everything has to be AI, even though
Mhm.
people say everything is AI today. I really think just automating a lot of the things that we could do and help the financial function, is going to be super exciting. But from a professional perspective.
Mhm.
However, when you go and wear the hats of a business leader, they really don't care. They just want their stuff to be done.
Yeah.
How much technology we use and how we use it and what it gives us, they don't care. We could sit for hours and do it,
Mhm.
or it can be done in minutes with a tool, right?
They just want it done.
Yeah, they just want it done. They just need the information. So I think with that said, I would say for a business user, I would they are they are not as motivated as we are, but I think we are motivated because like if you go into like audit, for example, you could do 100% audit with these tools today. We couldn't do it before,
Yeah.
right? Like it would take us
Mhm.
forever. So I think we are more excited than them. But what it does do is it gives them more information at their fingertips faster than before. I think that's what they should be excited about. I don't know if I should say what they should be excited about,
Yeah.
but I think, this is what this would be like my perspective. I think some people are a little bit more tech savvy. They understand the financial ecosystem and they want to leverage it. But most of them I talk to is that's not their excitement area.
Mhm. Yeah. No, I think it's interesting to see, and you're right, even if it's just having the information quicker at your feet, it is there's going to be so many different shifts. And any predictions as far as businesses, for the next, 5, 10 years in finance, you working with mergers and acquisitions and seeing a lot on that end. Do you see any trends or changes as far as the small and medium-sized business world?
So absolutely. I think in every industry, there's a lot of M&A, whether you take a brewery company or
Hmm.
you look at, like consumers, consumer market, you look
Hmm.
at B2C, B2B, and also with baby boomers going, services
Hmm.
companies are also going to get impacted. So you will see a lot more M&A for sure. And people are doing more M&A not because of just a revenue growth aspect and scaling that. I think they're being very strategic and understanding, okay, what is the value this brings to an organization? And looking at M&A in that lens. And they're going after businesses, sometimes more unconventional, like, you'll see all HVAC companies. Some people are going into more home services. Post-COVID, the predictions, has been quite erratic because a lot of things from a home services perspective have kind of, gone, a lot of investment has gone in that area. And also I do think that, senior living will be an automation there is going to be another space. Um, and a lot of technology, more robotics kind of things you will see a lot more things that are boring jobs that no one wants to do. I think you'll see, pain points getting addressed with innovation.
Yeah.
Um,
I agree.
so
I
yeah, so
agree. I feel like it'll be
my,
hard to kind of
my
put that back in, as far as the robotics. I do feel like it's just going to be a growing, and like, yeah, growing needs of senior population. All of those things are going to definitely be a big shift for business owners. But I think there's also always going to be space for that creativity and that problem solving piece. So a lot of different, ideas that people have or starting businesses could be an exciting time for that too. Yeah, knowing that we can, we have so much more access to information and tools, which is great. Thank you so much for coming and speaking with me today. How can listeners find you if they want to learn more about you or about FinTeam One?
So they can reach out to our website. So www.finteam.one is our website. And my email is Chanduraj. So PCHANDURAJ at finteam.one.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for coming on and talking about this and for your business and creating something that can be so helpful for business owners. And, I'd like to encourage all the business owners out there to definitely be more proactive about your finances. I think it's definitely, there's a lot to do, but I think once you set some time up to actually create a strategy to be more forward thinking and looking when it comes to your business. It can help you, it can help your staff, everybody kind of understand the bigger picture. And it is really kind of self-care for your business to understand the numbers and the math and even the parts that might feel like they're not, appealing. There's people out there who love this work and can help you with it and can break it down in a monthly meeting to help make things go so much smoother for you. So thank you so much for listening, and we'll talk again next week. Don't forget to share with friends and family, and together let's demystify the world of money. Knowledge is the key to financial empowerment.